All right, you should be able to see my screen. We're gonna continue where we left off. Um, I am not feeling well today. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to teach today. For now, I'm gonna try to teach. If things get worse for me, then I will just stop the class early. But for now, I'm gonna just try to work through it. All right. And I have already, again, given instructions, and I told you I will go over how to submit the exam. Um, I know about the exam, I'm aware of it, but there are reasons why I don't want you to submit at this time. You were supposed to have done the work, and that's all you need at this stage. So, not ask me over and over again the same thing about the exam. I'm aware of it. uh, when I want the information, I will tell you what needs to be done. But for right now, please leave it alone. This is why on the exam itself, I told you that I will go over these instructions later on. And right now is still not the time. When it is time, I will tell you. And all you have to do is at that basically provide a link. But right now, you don't need to do anything at all. So please do not ask me, uh, over and over again, how do we submit? How do we submit? How do we submit? I know what I'm doing, and I'm just telling you, I wanted the work, uh, but I will have you submit when it's the right time. It's not right now the right time. All right. Um, this is a continuation of the lecture that we had. I am uh, right now not 100% sure. I believe I drew this line here to indicate that this is where we last left off, uh, and we should not have gone through this portion. Again, this is where we're going to be starting. If I'm making a mistake or something, please let me know. So this is a continuation of the human resource and payroll processing cycle. We had started this in the last class, and we'll either finish it today or into probably Wednesday. I'm not quite sure. We'll see again. Based on how I'm feeling today, how far I'm able to go. So, organizations can categorize HR and payroll processes in various ways based on their structure. So, a typical categorization includes six major areas that we have been discussing these. So, the first one is what's called employee onboarding, and we are going to discuss this in detail. Then, employee maintenance, employee termination, and in parallel, um, after you onboard the employees, is payroll processing, benefit administration, and compliance and reporting. So this is not linear, but these are just six categories um, uh, of functions split between HR and payroll processes. So it's not something not meant to be linear. Yes, employee onboarding will be one of the first things done, but this is not a linear list. Many of these things will be going on in parallel. So often at times, especially in the past, but even now, and especially for smaller organizations, they may outsource this human resource and payroll function. And as I emphasized in the last class, human resource is somewhat specialized. Obviously, people also specialized. Not everybody can just sit down and do payroll, but payroll has been highly automated for about 50 years. So you don't need the same level of skill set to be able to run payroll, but with human resources, at least up until now. Now, with the use of AI, you'll be able to perform a lot of functions, but this may be something that an organization itself is unable to manage. So many areas of human resources, especially, may be outsourced. And for payroll purposes, payroll processing, these are some of the major companies. And again, they've been around, I'm thinking probably from 1970s onwards. ADP, Paycheck, again, I don't know the exact history, but payroll processing was one of the very first things in accounting to get automated. So even going into, let's say, early 2000s, certainly late 1990s, uh, all the accounting function was not computerized. Yep, you had bookkeeping and accounting software, but no, not everything was computerized. But things like payroll processing, because you had to do this very frequently for most companies every 2 weeks, and because it's complex in nature, especially because you've got rules and regulations um, which span not just federal but state and often local. And a company may have offices in many states, in many localities, and it just made sense to automate this. So payroll processing, again, probably from 1970, 75, 76, certainly onwards, has been highly automated. And even now, it's fairly easy to do payroll with virtually any software that's out there. But other functions that may need to be outsourced, again, besides payroll, benefit administration, retirement plan administration, background checks, recruiting, these functions may be outsourced to one organization that just does HR, or you may be sending it out to various organizations to assist you. And typically, companies will keep uh, in-house things like strategic human resource planning, employee relations, performance management, company culture development, things like that. So we're going to next talk about employee onboarding process, which is the first item I mentioned here. So employee onboarding. So what exactly is that? And we're going to discuss that next. So this is a bit of what we're going to be doing um, today. Employee onboarding is basically the process of establishing a new employee in the company. So, what do you need to do to help them quickly adapt to their position within the organization and help them understand organization's culture? So, why onboarding matters? These are the some of the benefits of onboarding. So reduce turnover, and that basically means employees who experience structured onboarding. In other words, onboarding is the process when an employee is about to start working for your company. So this is sort of training before the training. This is where you are helping them understand a little bit about your organization. Think of this a little bit like colleges and universities have student orientation sessions. So this is basically an employee orientation. That's sort of what we're talking about. So it has numerous benefits, reduces turnover, um, gets people up and going quickly, reach productivity faster, uh, improved engagements, uh, yields better company reputation, helps with the compliance. Employees understand the rules and regulations. So, while it has many benefits, think of it, employee onboarding, like orientation. And some of these benefits may just be psychological, that uh, the employee feels that the company cares about them. Simple as that, that they care about you. And that by itself may give you some additional benefits. But certainly, this would be a critical one, compliance, depending on the type of industry there is. With proper onboarding, employees will understand what they need to do. That's basically the purpose of it. So, and if you don't do a good job of onboarding, it's obviously the opposite of these things. A big thing being morale would be impacted, as well as legal risk. Training might be wasted. You may be spending a lot of money training employees, and um, they again, the benefits or the disadvantages associated with turnover. That's what a turnover expense is. You may have trained people, they leave fairly quickly. So, employee onboarding. So, what is the onboarding process, and what do you need to do during each of the stages? And sort of ignore the days in here. Once somebody accepts the job offer, make sure the offer is written. You get a acknowledgement from the candidate, and background checks have been done. So with the background verification, what are you going to be doing? Criminal history, employment verification, reference checks, and if um, necessary, if appropriate, maybe a credit check or a drug screening, if again necessary or required. So all of these things would be done. And why are we discussing this? From the perspective of an accountant and an auditor, you are looking at these things to identify potential problems with the company. If, for example, the morale is poor, then they, the organization may be at a greater risk for employee fraud. So, all of these things will help you as an accountant auditor make sure, one, that the company is complying with um, legal requirements, and that you have some idea of the culture as well of the company. So you would make sure that you look into these things when you're auditing a company or you're getting to know a company in more detail. So other things that they need to do uh, before pre-start communication, welcome them, email package, instructions for the first day, required document list, for example, whatever paperwork they need to do or bring with them, etc. So start of the onboarding process is basically it's orientation. Think of it as just basically orientation. So you would meet your team members, you would tour the facility, etc. Administrative setup would be a big part of it. So you need to make sure this form, which I-9, is filled out. I-9 is basically to make sure that the employee is legally eligible to work in United States. So it would be checking to see, are they US citizens? If not, are they green card holders? If not, sometimes just based on social security number, they are given authorization to work, some sort of a work permit. So whatever that is, that requirement is fulfilled through I-9 form. So when we are saying employment eligibility verification, we are really talking about immigration and naturalization service, that an employee is legally allowed to work in United States. Then other type of paperwork would be doing Form W-4. Most of you, I'm sure, have completed this form yourself, and this is your federal tax withholding form. And usually that same form is used for state and local withholding, but it's possible that there is a separate form for the state. Nowadays, virtually every employee is going to have direct deposit. So you want to get that taken care of, include get direct deposit authorization, plus get the information. Many of these things are highly automated. So, for example, I use QuickBooks for businesses, and except for the I-9 form, which human has to directly verify. But for most of these other things, W-4, direct deposit, all of that, you just have the employee go to your website and fill out the information. Once they have filled it out, you will get an email alert saying that the employee has completed this portion of it. Again, like I said, for the I-9, a human has to look at the actual documentations, original documentations, like somebody's passport or a physical green card and social security card, driver's license, things like that. A human has to actually look at those things and sign off, indicating that they looked at the originals, and before returning it, obviously you keep a copy, but return the original to the employee. Other things that would be done right at the beginning would be set up email accounts, provide them with Wi-Fi, network access, software licenses, keys or access to the building, and phone extension assignment, etc. Distribute equipment, laptops, phone, etc. The uniforms, that would all need to be done right there. Other types of activities, this is all part of the onboarding process. Have the employee enroll in benefits, health insurance, dental, vision, etc. Training initiation. So this is where you are actually starting job specific training schedule. And often, depending on the type of job, you may need to have some sort of safety training, such as OSHA requirements. I know OS stands for occupational safety. I'm not sure HA might be hazard or health. I'm not quite sure. I can Google it. But basically, OSHA is responsible. OSHA regulations need to be followed as far as safety training is concerned. Compliance training, such as violence prevention, workplace violence, workplace harassment, etc. Compliance system training, how you use specific systems, like at Queen's College, it may be learning, if you're a professor, to use Brightspace or CUNY first, etc. So possibly, depending again on the job, setting up goals, performance expectation, how somebody would be evaluated. Typically during the first 90 days, again, this is all part of the on process. So onboarding is not just a 1 day or a 2 day thing. This is all part of the onboarding. It's basically initial orientation, but that goes on. It doesn't stop after a day or two or a week. So making sure that there is continuing training and development. Employee gets to know the company better. They know how to interact with customers. They understand company's processes and procedures, so on and so forth. And possibly, again, depending on each company, when they are going to be doing reviews, 30 days, 60 day, 90 day, but quarterly performance reviews at a minimum would be done. Integration activities to help the employees socialize a little bit more. So team building activities, social events, mentoring, and cross-departmental meetings. So just help employees integrate more within the organization. And some of the stuff is really just sort of straightforward, so I'm not gonna spend too much time. Again, this is obviously like a sample schedule of what might happen on day one, week one. So I'm not gonna be going through these items. Again, I'll make some of the stuff available to you once I'm done. But right now, I've not posted this on Brightspace, but I will post my lecture notes once I'm done. So first 30 days, this is just a repeat of what I've already covered. So next, let's talk a little bit about risks in employee onboarding. And if there are any questions so far, I'll stop for a minute or so. I'll let you send in questions before I move on. All right. So uh, risks in employee onboarding. So a big risk is, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, compliance risk, that you are not complying with legal rules and regulations, or the employees that you are training, they do not understand rules or regulations, or they do not understand safety requirements. So your employees can end up making mistakes, which can be detrimental to the company. So compliance risk would fall under one, failure to complete required documentation. For example, I-9 form, and these notes are not uh, for the current environment, but certainly in the current environment, with all that's been going on with ICE, immigration and custom enforcement, you can have real problems if I-9 forms are not complete or not completed properly. With the W-4 form, incorrect tax withholding setup. And uh, most of the time, the risk here is going to be low because you're not having the employees are usually filling this stuff out online, and the software system will pretty much ensure that they put all the critical information, and then the software is making sure that withholdings are being done correctly. So this one, yes, it's a risk if you're not using proper software and you're doing things manually, but hardly anyone is doing things manually nowadays. So I would not put this as a very high risk, but yeah, if you completely ignore this step, you never give your employees W-4, you never get these things filled out, yeah, then it's a very serious risk. So other things, and this can be that benefits enrollment may become a serious potential issue. So employees are usually covered in terms of healthcare, insurance, retirement, etc. And if these forms are not filled out correctly, submitted correctly, you could have a problem. For example, that the employee may have a medical emergency and has no coverage, and the company might be then held liable, even though they might have had in health insurance. So there's usually a time window here, often 30 days, in which to enroll employees. Same thing with things like life insurance, disability insurance, that there's a set time period during which the employees must enroll. And this is both a responsibility on uh, the part of the employee. Employee has to make sure they get the paperwork done. The employee may be the one who is at fault, doesn't get it to you, but your HR department also has to make sure that you get this paperwork from employee or remind them, etc. And of course, once you get it, you complete these things out in a timely manner. Security risks would include somebody gaining unauthorized access to data, potential for theft, manipulation, etc. Risk of inadequate background screening. I think that's sort of obvious. You may end up hiring employees that you shouldn't. They are going to be a problem for you. Risk to properly secure company property. You may have theft, data breaches, etc. So you want to have physical controls like locks, keys, digital cards to restrict access, etc. Operational risks, incomplete training. So employees may not know what they're supposed to do, though they may not be doing the work correctly. Example here is a forklift operator doesn't receive sufficient training and ends up causing an accident. But obviously, any field, if employees are not properly trained, you're going to have potential problems. Poor communication. So if the employee is confused or does not understand fully what they're supposed to do, they're more likely to leave your company. So you're going to have early turnover. Yeah, and you may even have to terminate them, but the risk is on both sides. If you do not communicate expectations, and then at the same time, employees do not know who to come to when there is a problem. So a simple example in a college context would be that students are assigned an advisor. So typically at Queen's College, you have a college advisor that's making sure that your entire bachelor's degree, whether you have questions about an English course or a math course or a course in your major, somebody answers that. And then we in accounting department have a major advisor. So one of the professors who can guide you about your accounting classes specifically. So this is again example of how you avoid poor communication, full clarity, who um, who is supposed to be doing what. So missed deadlines, territorial conflict, accountability gap. So I'll give you a very simple example. Two employees are responsible for closing up the business physically. Just imagine a store and you have to lock it. And if there's inadequate role clarity, one employee may think the other is locking up and may not lock up the place. Or so again, just making sure everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do. Role clarity. Financial risks would be overpayment due to errors. Let's move on. Fraudulent new hire, somebody doesn't even exist, or if they exist, they are not properly trained, etc. So it is possible for HR to create fictitious new hires and direct payments to their own account. So again, either fictitious employees or you have a real employee, but they are not who they say they are, or they do not have the training that's needed or the qualifications needed to perform the job. So misclassification of workers. So this is an example of potentially misclassifying employees as independent workers. So there is and why would a company do that? And this is something that companies will sometimes intentionally do. They don't want to have the person as an employee, rather they want them to be an independent contractor. And there are specific definitions, legal definitions that IRS has as to who qualifies as an employee and who qualifies as an independent contractor. There's like a checklist that you can see, it's available online, which goes into it. But typically, if you hire somebody as an independent contractor, you don't have to give them benefits like health, insurance, retirement benefit. And when it comes to paying for Social Security and Medicare tax, an independent contractor is responsible for paying his own share and the company share. So, roughly from a tax perspective, this works out to that an independent contractor has to pay around 15% towards Social Security and Medicare out of their own salary or compensation. If somebody is classified as an employee, then the company is responsible for roughly 7.5%, and the employee is responsible for 7.5%. Plus, there are other things that the company may have to do, like get workers' comp insurance, etc., which they don't have to do or may not have to do for independent contractors. Independent contractors are often expected to have their own insurance. So often it is in the interest of the company to classify somebody as an independent contractor. IRS doesn't want that. Even withholding, you may not have to do or payroll, accounting, etc. A lot of the headaches from a company point of view disappear if you classify somebody as an independent contractor. Many instances, IRS wants you to classify them as an employee. And again, they're very specific guidelines. So if you misclassify workers, there's a real risk associated with it. Significant back tax liabilities and penalties may be assessed to your company. And I don't remember, what the ultimate outcome was, but a few years ago, Uber, the taxi service, Uber was classifying everybody as independent contractors. So all the drivers were being classified as independent contractors rather than as employees. And I know some litigation was going on with respect to that. I'm not sure what the ultimate outcome was, but it's just again an example, and this is quite prevalent. So misclassification of workers, whether somebody is an employee or an independent contractor, you need to make sure, and this is really on the accounting side of things, not really on the human resource side. You as an accountant would need to make sure, especially if you're auditing, that employees are being classified properly using IRS definition of classification. So this is part of control activities. So control activities refers to internal controls, and there are certain things that need to be done. One of them is segregation of duties, which basically means different people perform different roles, and you do this so that no one person is able to perform a task and then cover up some sort of a error or irregularity. Error meaning a mistake or a fraud. So control activities. Um, I'm gonna probably just skip this. I'll make these things available to you so you can look at it. So I'm gonna just go through right now the broad categories. So we had segregation of duties, then authorization controls. So, and again, I'm going to just move on with it. verification and validation, physical controls, and information and technology controls. These are controls which are just built into the software system. And again, I'm skipping things intentionally because otherwise, uh, this is not as critical. And these are just more like lists of things that you need to worry about. Again, same, it's basically the same thing. So I'm going to just move on a little bit. So, summary of onboarding. So, this is part two that we've been doing. Uh, hiring authorization, what type of controls should be part of hiring, employee verification, payroll setup, system access. So these are just list of items that you would need to make sure and documentation that needs to be done. All right. So we're now getting to the next stage, and I don't want to spend this normally would take about 30-40 minutes. I do not want to spend that much time on it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about employee termination. Like I said, I'm not feeling well today, so I do want to cover a little bit more, and then I'm going to probably end the class in just a few minutes. So how do you go about terminating? So we just discussed the stuff that was needed for onboarding. So just when you're hiring somebody, and now we're going to be discussing things about termination of employees. So evaluating the employee termination process. So employee termination is basically a process of removing employee from active employment status while often viewed negatively. Uh, termination is a natural part of employment life cycle and includes many voluntary separations. So you could have an employee quitting, and they may not be quitting because they're mad at the company, they just got another opportunity, etc. So we have various categories of employee termination. We're going to start off with voluntary resignation. So employee chooses to leave for another company, relocates for personal reasons, retires, goes to school, changes career, etc. And then you have involuntary termination for cause. So within this, for cause meaning they're doing something wrong. So they violated company policy, they have it's poor performance, misconduct, or unethical behavior of some type, not showing up or are continuously late, insubordination, meaning they're not following their supervisors. Orders or not doing the task that they're supposed to be doing, and criminal activity, obviously stealing, and or stealing might be again physically stealing something from the company or data theft or just engaging in some sort of a completely unrelated activity. Doesn't really directly affect the company, but it affects the company as far as the moral character is concerned. So often companies will have some sort of a moral character clause in their contract. So involuntary termination is there's no fault with the employee, you just cannot afford the employee. So you may lay them off either temporarily or permanently. But this is different from this one where you are firing them. There's a reason you're getting rid of them. Here, yeah, there is a reason for you to get rid of them, but it's not specific to the employee. Here, it's because of the employee. Here, you are basically doing this because of circumstances beyond the control of that specific employee. And this typically happens in an economic downturn, or if the company is restructuring, a department is closing down, you lose some major contracts, mergers, acquisitions, which is again sort of part of restructuring, and the position is eliminated due to technology or whatever. Other types of termination include retirement, and the employee actually just dies or is otherwise incapacitated somehow. So I'm not going to get into this. These are just statistics type of information. And we're going to talk a little bit about termination process, what you're supposed to do. So a properly managed termination process will protect the employee and the organization, making sure that there's compliance and dignity is maintained in this entire process. So for voluntary resignations, employee will need to usually give written notice. This will get documented. Often something called an exit interview is scheduled, and maybe a transition plan developed, like who's going to take over, and they may have to, this current employee may have to train their replacement. For involuntary termination, documentation of performance issues. So you may have a policy that, okay, something was done wrong 3 times or 5 times or whatever. Every time the employee is doing something wrong, it may get documented. Periodic performance reviews would indicate if there was a problem, and there would be, again, you would be documenting these things, review discipline record with the employee, and at the same time make sure everything is getting documented. You may now, if we are talking the actual department that's going to fire the employee, they may need to consult with human resources and possibly their own legal department. Approval of forms appropriate, and again depends on the level of termination, and ends with, of course, calculation of final pay, and there are sometimes rules and regulations as to how quickly you have to give the employee their final paycheck. So for involuntary terminations, these are some of the things that you may want to consider. Schedule it early in the week, Monday through Friday. It used to be companies would terminate, and we're talking now involuntary termination, would terminate their employees on a Friday. So it's the end of the week, they would terminate them on Friday. And then we found out that that had a very negative psychological effect. When you terminate somebody on Friday, then they feel more helpless, they are not able to do anything. And the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, where they have nothing to do but stew over that they were terminated. So it is, from a psychological perspective, not a good idea to terminate someone on a Thursday or a Friday. Instead, you want to terminate somebody at the beginning of the week. And part of it is it gives the employees a chance to begin their job search. So let's say you terminate someone on Monday or Tuesday. Now, that employee, you terminate them at the end of the day, Tuesday, at least on Wednesday, they can go out and try to do something to find a new job, to get, and that's typically more difficult to do on weekend. So this was one of the things that was changed, in the company culture. I want to say recently, but recently means probably still maybe 15, 20 years ago. In the past, it used to be companies would typically terminate their employees on a Friday. Now, they will typically, and it's obviously up to the company, but they'll try to terminate somebody earlier on in the week. And main reason is psychological. It makes the employee feel that they have a little bit more control over their life because they're able to then go out and do something instead of just stewing or being upset Saturday and Sunday. All right. So at the termination meeting, you want to keep things brief. Usually, two or more representatives should be present. Explain the decision clearly. Um, give the reason why you're terminating them, but don't go into too many details. Um, Generally, when you're terminating an employee, but you're firing them, they already know the reason because this should not be coming as a surprise to employee that all of a sudden, okay, you're terminated. You usually would have given them feedback in advance. Your job is to remain professional and compassionate. You do not argue with the employee. If they get upset, they curse at you, you maintain professional and do not engage with them. So do not argue, do not negotiate, just tell them when the final pay would be and what the process is for uh, benefits, etc. So there are legal requirements like something called COBRA. The human resource people would be responsible for that portion. Collect company property if you got a computer, keys, files, paperwork, and you may need to have security depending on again the situation. Escort the employee to get their personal belongings, or even if you're not directly escorting it, you may have somebody from a distance monitoring the employee and make sure that they leave the premises. Again, do not embarrass people, do it professionally. So, and I think right here I'm gonna stop today and I'm gonna just put a line through. Let me also indicate um, so yeah, we're gonna end the class at this point. We'll continue on Wednesday, same topic, and I'm hoping on even though it's quite a bit here that I can finish this off on Wednesday. If you're taking another class with me, like the one I have at 6:30 today, as of right now, I'm gonna come in and try to teach the class. I'm gonna try to rest up for the next 30-40 minutes, and then I'm gonna try again. It is possible that if you're taking the accounting 343 with me, that I may end early, but again, I'm not sure at this point. And I'm just going to see how things are in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So if you're taking another class with me, show up. Otherwise, I'll see you on Wednesday. Uh, I'm not sure, you what your question is uh, about the notes. As I mentioned, I'm going to make the notes available on Brightspace. They are not there yet.